Welcome to all you storm watchers, storm chasers, and Leanierologists out there to another edition of Tempest Talks, where we talk about lean principles and how they apply to our personal and professional lives. This month, we're continuing our series on the lean product journey of the Imai process, namely with standard work and why it is not micromanagement. Today, to discuss this topic, we have my good friend Tim Martin here. Tim has 40 plus years in various executive leadership positions in supply chain, aftermarket services, customer support, program management, business development, and operations in the aerospace industry. The roles that he has held include vice president, president, chief commercial officer, and chairman of the board at major sub-tier suppliers in aerospace, such as Doncasters Ltd, Doncasters Incorporated USA, and United Technologies Aerospace Systems, which was formerly the Goodrich Corporation or Goodrich Aerostructures. Although he has recently retired, he has not slowed down. He continues to advise organizations, including Doncasters Ltd, Emerald Operating Partners, and Cornerstone Capital Holdings, where he sits on the board of directors. Tim holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Business Administration and is also a certified lean manufacturing practitioner with extensive continuous improvement experience. When I worked for Tim, he was guiding the supply chain organization in their own lean transformation, as well as supporting our suppliers in their individual lean journeys. Thank you so much, Tim, for being willing to chat with us today, and of course, for being my personal advocate in my individual leadership development. You've always been a loyal friend to me, as well as a great person to work with and for. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're welcome, Michelle. It's absolutely my pleasure. And I'm delighted that you invited me to participate in this interview. And you did a pretty good job with my background. I don't think I need to add anything else to it. And look forward to your questions and having an active dialogue with you.
Awesome. This is great. We're so excited. Like I mentioned before, Tim led the supply chain organization in our lean transformation. So before then, it had been at Aerostructures for what? I think it was like 15 years, but it was mostly in the operations side.
Right. Yeah. So I spent 35 years down at the Aerostructures site. It was originally Roar, and then it became Goodrich after it was acquired, and Goodrich Aerostructures, and then it was acquired by United Technologies. So through that whole time, I started off my career in operations, worked my way into aftermarket, and then I spent quite a bit of time in program management, where I led the biggest P&L for our company. At the time, it was for the A320 V2500, and also the RB211 on the 757 program. So, and then my final assignment, final 10 years, was in supply chain. So, and it was a lot of fun. And I retired there as a vice president, but I took a second career and I went to work for Doncasters, and that was really great for 5-6 years. And then now, of course, semi-retired, doing some consulting, but and I sit on the board of directors of a private equity company that has aerospace companies. So anyway, yeah, so I've had a lot of things to do, but lean has always been a big part of my makeup. And at the end of the day, lean is, you start seeing things through a different lens when you have been trained in lean. And we had a really good mentor at Roar and Goodrich, a person named Greg Peters, who really helped us transform our company and our way of thinking. And totally. So when I go into companies now, I can't help but notice things, I mean, right away, and you always start with the basics, like, oh God, is this place a mess? 5S, it's got EH&S issues. And quite frankly, I go around to our own companies that Cornerstone has, and I make those same observations, and I give them to the president before I leave.
That's
And I have
awesome.
dialogue with them because it's important that you start with the basics. And
Yeah.
I always thought one of the most important things was to make sure you had a clean, healthy, and safe environment for employees to work in. And
Yeah.
when I don't visualize that, I worry about the rest of the company and how it's being led. So,
Yeah, I could not agree more. When I walk into a company and I see that it's in total disarray,
uh-huh,
immediately my thought process is, ooh, their culture is probably struggling a little
yeah,
bit.
I agree.
Yeah. Well,
So.
and you've also served in the military as well.
Yes, I did,
So,
and I was in the Navy when I got out of high school, and I used the Navy as a jump board to get my VA benefits for the GI Bill to go to school
awesome.
later on. So it was a great experience, and I was very lucky because I ended up in the aviation side of the Navy,
Yeah.
where I was what they called the air crew, and I was
Ah,
air crew on three different aircraft. C1A, CT-39, and C9B, and mainly in a VR squadron where it was a lot of logistics and cargo and some passengers and things of that nature. But I was thinking back on, some of your inquiries on standard work. And
yeah.
of course, one of the first things that you learn once you become qualified in aircrew, and I was a loadmaster and crew chief, they have a manual called a NATOPS
Huh.
manual.
Okay.
And the last part of the S in there stands for standardization.
Ah,
Okay. So
perfect.
it's basically standard operating procedures for flight crew and
Yeah.
operations on everything from maintaining and checking certain things in the aircraft before flight, during flight, and after flight checks.
Yeah.
And and if you didn't have that standardization process, quite frankly, you wouldn't have consistency and you might miss things. Okay.
Yeah.
So I learned on at a very young age, I think I was about 18 or so, that the importance of standardization. And
Totally.
they even do a little bit of it in boot camp for you because it's more 5S and point of use oriented there, where you learn how to be shipshape, so to speak, in your own small little quarters, and getting things organized. But that was one memory that came back to me in regard to standard. We didn't call it standard work; we called it standardization.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, sometimes I avoid the term standard work because
Mhm.
to the layman,
Yeah.
the laywoman, they don't quite understand what that means. But if you say
Mhm.
standardization, they do understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's basically, writing things down, which could have been gathered from a series of empirical data
Yeah.
or necessary steps for compliance or whatever.
Yeah.
But at least you have it written down and you can follow a set of instructions. Because
Yeah.
think about it, even when let's say you buy a new piece of furniture at Office Depot and you got to put it together, right? So you bring
Yeah.
it home and what do you have there? You have instructions, right?
Mhm.
You have
Exactly.
standardized instructions, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Otherwise, you wouldn't know where to begin, right?
Exactly.
And they start off with a process of, okay, this is all the inventory that should be in this box. Here's all the
Right.
fasteners, here's the side panels, here's some plastic strips, here's some wheels or whatever,
Exactly.
and then you kind of lay it all out, and then you
Yep.
start assembling it with step 1 through 20 or whatever. And
Exactly.
so when you ask question about, well, do you use it at home? Well,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily use it in my daily living. However, when you put it into the context of that, most people can understand, and that's really
Totally.
and that's what a standard process is basically.
Yeah, exactly. It makes me think about whenever I think about using it in my personal life. immediately I think about the kitchen as well.
Uh-huh.
So following a
Okay.
recipe, if we don't follow a recipe the way that it's supposed to, some of the chemical reactions between the different ingredients can
Right.
make a cake turn out flat instead of
Right.
what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, you forgot the yeast, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so you need that. And
Yeah.
so but it makes you not forget. And
Yeah.
to that end, that's the whole point of standard work or standardization, because
Yeah.
it reduces or eliminates a variation, although there's no variation that's totally eliminated, but it significantly reduces it. Okay.
Totally.
The chance, because we're all humans, right? So
Yeah.
we kind of err, but it makes it a little bit more what they call mistake proof or
Yes.
Tokyo in the industry. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So that's one of the great benefits of it.
Yeah.
But it's like anything else, unless you start off with an organization or understanding of how you got to get things cleaned up, have a safe environment,
Yeah.
then do things kind of flow, like the example with putting the cabinet together. You know, you got to lay it all out, you got to develop a flow for it, right?
Yeah.
Then you follow the instructions. Okay. Then you go back and recheck things, which is kind of making sure you got any problems resolved. And let's say if you have two fasteners left, and you're going, oh, okay, well, what am I doing with
These
that?
go.
Where it is goes, and then you go back and retrace your steps. So
Yeah.
you can apply that stuff to the home environment.
Yeah, it totally. One of my friends, I think I mentioned it to you. He took it to the extreme, to the point where he wrote standard work for how his kids need to brush their teeth. That's insane. That to me is micromanaging.
And
And
that's not a good thing.
like that turns people off of it, right?
No, you're right. You're so right about that.
It's quite interesting, because I find it interesting that you call it standardization, because you're absolutely right, versus standard work, because sometimes in some organizations the term standard work could be used as kind of like well, it has a bad connotation because they think that they're being watched, right?
Right.
How do you overcome that kind of thing, being a leader, knowing that you need standardization, but it's kind of like a bad word, if you will? How do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I used to do, and of course, standard work always starts with observations, right? I mean, how are the employees or technicians, mechanics, or office worker, how are they doing their job today? Okay. And it's not all stopwatch oriented, but some of it is. And, you know, you're just kind of observing. And the way I would approach it is, hey, listen, you know, you've talked for years or wanted to be involved on how to fix things here as an employee, right? And here's your opportunity to go ahead and show how you put something together, how you manufacture something, or how you assemble, and then what kind of help you really think you need on improving this, and not only to make your job easier to perform, but doing what you want to do is putting together a good quality product for the company that you work for, right? So here's your opportunity. And then I think, you know, there's always some tough nuts to crack, you know, some don't agree with that, but I would say 95% of the people want to do that kind of thing. And that's kind of where I would start to kind of soften the blow, but never go ahead. I'm not a big mandate type person, but what I will say is that, hey, listen, here's an opportunity for us to be successful together and for you to have your input. And quite frankly, a lot of times that's what you really get. You see how people are struggling to do something, or, oh my goodness, they're having to walk halfway across a shop to get a special tool. It's not available for them, and they're searching for it. Somebody else checked it out and they don't know where it is. So they're wasting a lot of time, and they're getting frustrated. And then, of course, it's just adding additional hours to the product and
Totally.
additional cost. And it's not their fault. It's the
Yeah.
way that leadership has let the thing
Get out of
develop.
hand. Yeah.
So it's an opportunity there. Or you might have an issue where it's really hard maybe to drill some part, okay? And maybe
Yeah.
it's a nickel product or titanium or whatever. And the technician isn't getting new drills, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and then not only that, when they do, maybe they'll have like a bit of a drill run and cause some variation in a quality issue where they have to call
Totally.
quality over. And so those are the kind of things that pop up that are frustrating to people, because no
Yeah.
matter who you are, most people want to do a good job, and they
Yeah.
don't, and they want the right tools to do it. So when you do observations, you do that, and then we would use a process of how do you lay out
Mhm.
perfect world, okay, on how this thing
Exactly.
should be put together or manufactured. Nothing's perfect, but
Yeah.
if we were to put in these kind of actions to eliminate some of these things that cause problems and variation,
Mhm.
what kind of good would it do for the technician
Yeah.
and the or the employee, and how would it also help the company by reducing costs and
Yeah.
making it more efficient? Okay. So
Totally.
my view has always been that quite frankly, you can do lots of observations and you can do a lot of stuff and write down the perfect way of doing things, but unless you had like a bias for action and you actually fix things,
Yes.
okay, it doesn't really matter, okay, because
Yes.
you know you expect different results and you keep on doing things the same old way, kind of
Yeah.
definition of insanity, right?
Right. Exactly. Good old Einstein.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Absolutely
that
true.
I'm
It's
just going to
it's
take a
so
drink of
true.
water here real quick.
Yeah. No worries.
Yep. I even got everything all point of use here, so I didn't have to walk away from the camera.
Me
So,
too. I've got mine.
there you go.
It's so true. Like the without the bias for action. I think that's what people miss when a continuous improvement person or even a leader is sent out onto the shop floor to do some time observations or time studies, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same thing. You go out and do those things. The employees are like, oh, they're watching me. They're watching me do this work, and then they're going to tell me how to do it. But from yours and my experience, it was very
Right.
different. It was, we're down there and doing the things like you were saying. Hey, you're part of this.
Right.
What things are you experiencing while we're doing time observations that are making life hard for you, the individual? We want to
Right.
make your life easier.
Yeah.
So does standard work look different? Because you've worked in both operations, of course, and then on the support side and supply chain and business development and so forth. Does standard work look different in those two worlds?
Yeah, it does actually, and I think when you look at it from an office or business development or supply chain point of view, you kind of look at it more from like a task and activity point of view. Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember when I went to Doncasters, from some of the experience that I had at Goodrich, I headed up sales and business development, and I put together a process called the 4 quad process. Okay.
Oh,
And
okay.
it basically talked about impact, high impact, low impact on sales. Okay. Easy to do, hard to do.
Yep.
Okay. And then I would have the sales directors put in all their opportunities and dollarize them and stuff. And it went onto an Excel sheet too. And then a definition of something that was high impact sales, but hard to do, and might be, well, we don't have all the technical experts in our company, or we don't have the capital equipment to perform the task. And so I would encourage them to go ahead. Okay, So there is a mitigation countermeasure to go ahead and overcome that so we can go pursue that sale if we go do
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z. And so we started that process, and I've even actually rolled it into a process that I use into the Cornerstone companies too, is that it kind of standardizes a way of looking at it.
Yeah.
It talks about risk and high potential, low potential.
Totally.
And what I found out, if something was on the bottom right-hand side, which meant very low sales impact and high investment to get there, I would put a big circle around it for the sales guys. And I say, well, we shouldn't be chasing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why pursue it?
Yeah. Let's not do that. If it's got high sales impact, but conversely, if it was on the left-hand side, bottom quadrant, it had maybe not as much of sales impact, but easy to do with a few things, and it was low-hanging fruit. Okay.
Totally.
So it helped them go after things, some things you will pursue through, and it's really kind of how I help them drive and get the work from my old company, UTC, when we won the A320neo exhaust nozzle. And they were all saying, oh, we'll never get that because it was already awarded to two other companies. And I said, no, we got to pursue it. Okay.
Yeah.
And we did, and kind of used a lot of that process, ended up winning that contract. So it was, there's other factors, but I tried to standardize a process. And then what they did is, when I met with them on a monthly basis, either like on a Zoom call, or if I did it on a WebEx, or if we had an in-person meeting, they had a standard process to present what they would call a KPI, performance indicator on how they're doing. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was very consistent. So that's how I did it there. Okay.
That's awesome.
And then when I was in the supply chain, when I ran the supply chain at Goodrich and UTAS, one of the things that, I try to, I said the supplier, we need to kind of make them a partner. They struggle.
Yes.
And not just go ahead and say, oh, okay, well, let's just beat them into submission for a price reduction. Maybe it'll be a price reduction they couldn't even achieve. So we would try to go in and evaluate, and you were a big part of this, Michelle, suppliers, and help identify some things that they could do to reduce their cost so they could share those cost savings with us. Okay.
Huge.
And it became part of the selection process.
Yes,
how
it did.
We chose suppliers. Were they willing to do it or not willing to do it? Most of them were willing to do it, but some of them were not.
Yeah.
And I think it, in the end, it led to less of a friction commercially.
Yeah.
You always have to have a contract, but and there's termination for convenience, termination for default clauses and contracts, and we certainly utilize those at times. But why do that? It's so much trouble for the customer, so much trouble for the supplier. Why not just help them be successful?
Yeah, exactly.
Not just give them lip service, but actually help them. And I used to say that our supplier success is our success, is our customer's success. Okay?
Yes, exactly. I remember that.
Yeah. And it was actually, we kind of quoted it there and put it at the end of presentations and
stuff. I remember that.
And stuff. So I think I coined that one, but we'll see.
I
didn't go out for a trade. I didn't go out for a trademark on it. So
well, I remember these processes that we were putting in place. We were standardizing them. They ended up working so well that the broader organization wanted it, and it ended up being shared as best practices at the corporate level. I remember that happening too.
Yeah, we also developed a standard process where it was kind of, I made the buyers and supply chain leadership get up on a weekly basis and do like a Gemba, okay?
Yes,
And
yes.
basically we had something called a watch list, okay?
Mhm.
Or to put it in Santa Claus terms, naughty and nice list, okay?
Right.
And that was basically where you read green, or you red, yellow, or green.
Yep.
Red is you're impacting delivery, quality, cost, and such. And yellow, okay, you're recovering. Green, you're back in the green, okay?
Yeah.
And what it would do is help us focus on what they call the vital few. And
Yes.
the vital few is really important in standard work too,
Yes, it
and
is.
with a lot of Six Sigma type of activities,
Totally.
because you can't boil the ocean, right?
No.
What is it? 3/4 of the world is in underwater,
Yeah.
and try boiling it. Okay, you can't
Yeah.
boil you can't boil the water. Okay? You can't boil the ocean. So I always try to say to everyone that the most important thing that we can do is focus on the people that are really hurting us operationally. Those are the critical, vital few.
Yeah.
And the rest of the folks, let's try to partner with them to make them even better. Okay.
Totally.
And so I believe that process is still in use there
Yeah.
after I've left or retired from there 8 years ago almost. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it
So,
is. Speaking to one of the supply chain managers
yeah.
just on LinkedIn one day,
Yeah.
he had mentioned that as well,
Yeah.
that they were still using it, which is great because
Yeah.
that's the kind of legacy you want to leave behind, right? Because
Yeah.
I mean, the processes worked well.
Mhm.
They also addressed the culture issue that
Yeah.
goes with standard work also. So our suppliers, they definitely felt like
Mhm.
family, like they were
Yeah.
part of our culture. They definitely felt that way. Which is unique because standard work, like I mentioned before, can be so they're watching me, they're telling me what I need to do. In your consultations,
Mhm.
how do you approach an organization that maybe wants to put in standard work, but are having a hard time with getting it going, if you will?
Yeah, well, first, and I think I've told you this before, Michelle, is that getting up to that stage of standard work is part of the journey, and it takes a while to get there.
It does.
I really think you've got to go in and do evaluation on the two first things you need to do, and that's put in 5S, or now they call it 6S because they include the each and S part of
True.
the 6S model. And you got to get some sort of
Yeah.
and once you do that, then you kind of you can see the forest through the trees. Okay, otherwise
Yeah.
you're going, well, why would you want to, we used to call, why would you ever want to facilitate waste? Okay,
Amen. Yeah.
and so therefore standard work might take a year or two, to
Yeah.
get, and so you got to do the building blocks of what we used to call 5S, now 6S. And then you get some linkage and flow. How is the shop laid out? Is it
Yeah.
optimized? And sometimes,
Exactly.
you've got some monument type of activities. Okay, and you can't move every machine in the world. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
certainly, maybe you can move the cell that does the finishing closer to the machine or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have quite as much, I mean, some people go all out with a kaikaku and just start moving everything around. But, I've got my different thoughts on that, on how effective that can be
Hmm.
when you got to go look at the basics. So when you get through that, and then you reduce the amount of time in an operation, and they'll and it's not always this way, but if you have the ability, to put things in like a U-shaped type of
Yeah.
cell, where you can come back around on yourself and put tools that are point of use, and maybe the fasteners, or that you use in an assembly process, point of use, lots of things like that, and so you don't have to go searching around. So once you get through
Yeah.
that, then you can start doing the observations
Totally. Agreed.
and do standard work. And by that time, whoever you're working with, they're seeing the benefits of the first two things.
Yeah,
And then they'll be ready mentally and
totally.
culturally to get there and take the next step. But, you talk about culturally, I mean, a lot of times people will come and say, hey, can you call the president or CEO of this company? Because they're really hurting us, So I would do that, but I would never beat them about the head. What I would do is say, okay, we want to help. Let me tell you what's going on with us. Okay.
Yeah.
We're missing our deliveries into Boeing or Airbus or whatever. And, and we need your help because
Okay.
you're a pacing part right now in our operations. And let me tell you, what happens is your part is one of the first things that go in to maybe an assembly process.
Yeah.
And we can't work around it for too long. So
yeah, exactly.
what can we do to help you? It's not like we're the government and here to help. We really will help. Okay.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
let's go take a look at what you've little levity there. You gotta
I like
take
it.
a look at what the bottlenecks are. Maybe we
Yeah,
can at least get through some of those things. Okay.
totally.
And what we'll find too, a lot of times when you go into a partner or supplier, maybe they wanted a price increase. And the reason why they wanted a price increase is because they couldn't get out of their way from an efficiency point of view. Maybe
Exactly.
we can avoid that. I mean, there's some things you can't avoid on pricing when commodity prices go up, like the
Yeah.
price of nickel, titanium, aluminum, or whatever.
Yeah,
But, that's a different story because nobody can control commodity prices in the world.
exactly.
But you can control a big part of your cost, which is labor and overhead.
Totally.
And, so we would go in and try to help some of those type of things.
Yeah, exactly. I remember on the shop floor, we would affectionately call them the triplets, right? We'd have
Uh,
the standard worksheet or the spaghetti diagram.
mhm.
We'd have the percent load chart, which was basically a visual of how we're performing to standard work. And then our standard work combination sheet, which was a time-based standards.
Right.
Since leaving the organization, I've seen where maybe a standard work combination sheet doesn't really make sense in a support
Mhm.
function.
Yeah.
And we could get estimated times and have a set of standard process steps. But
Yeah.
like, I think of things like negotiations. I remember trying to do a time observation of negotiations, and that was like all over the place. And I essentially was like, I don't think this is going to work. And I
No,
remember doing time observations of an engineer doing design as
right.
well. I was like, yeah, he clicked some random button. I don't know what it was trying to fix. Like,
But
to me, that was
yeah,
more
I
of a
mean,
waste
the
than a
actual
help.
process, the actual process of negotiation, I don't see how you can do standard work
Yeah,
combination. Yeah.
yeah.
However, you can do it for the preparation of the
Yes,
contract
yes.
administrator or the leader or the buyer getting ready. Okay, have I got these things already?
Yeah,
Have we done an internal cost estimate on this?
yeah,
And have we gone ahead and reviewed the key points in the contracts and the terms and conditions? Okay.
totally.
Have we totally understood the escalation clauses in the contract? So
Yeah,
you just check all these things
yeah,
and then you go, okay, am I ready? Oh, not quite yet. Okay. Have you looked at the drawings and from a producibility point of view, have you met with the engineer and a manufacturing engineer and said, okay, how hard is this thing to make and what kind of special processes does it take?
right,
And those type of things. So have you done the right type of follow-up and preparation
right.
so you can actually go in and have a dialogue with the people that you're negotiating with. So you're not.
Totally.
So it'll it'll make a better situation if you do, because one thing's for sure, the supplier knows how to make the part. Okay.
Yep.
We didn't necessarily know how, because we didn't make it in-house anymore. Okay.
Right.
So you've got to get yourself up to at least some sort of level playing field. Okay.
Totally.
So that's the kind of things that you can do in a negotiation, but actually the process of going back and forth, that's kind of more of a strategy thing,
Right.
Okay. And I used to, I learned a lesson from one of my first bosses when I was program manager, program director was Bill McDowell. And he used to always tell me that always do a lot of listening and never negotiate with yourself.
That's good advice.
And yeah, you see a lot of people, they look at something, oh, God, I can't do that for all this, that, and reason.
Yep.
And I will say to them, well, why are you negotiating with yourself?
Yeah.
I mean, find out what the situation is and enter into a two-way dialogue and do a lot of listening from the other side, because you'll find out an awful lot, because usually the other person wants to do a lot of talking.
Yeah, usually.
And make notes and everything. And so those are two key things that I always try to remember.
Yeah.
And,
that rings true.
Didn't always work, but it was kind of a standard way, if you will, of how I thought about things.
Yeah.
So, and it made me more commercially astute.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now you have me thinking about how I have standardized my thought process. So if I'm going in and facilitating a Kaizen event, I do something similar where I'm assessing the situation, I'm assessing the culture of the Kaizen team that's meeting. I'm making decisions of, is the event going well? Is it not going well? And then the number one question I ask myself is this going to become wallpaper? That's
exactly.
one of the things
to your point earlier,
and
it became a lot of wallpaper in the
office.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it just did. Okay.
Yeah, it did.
And then there are some things that I don't know. I mean, you can take 5S too far in the office environment too. It's good to have things orderly and everything else. But it got to one point where we're asking people to take their pictures of their wife off the top of their bookshelf and things like that. I'm going, really? Come on. That's going too far.
Amen. Yeah.
So it's one thing being wanting to have an efficient environment where you can communicate and you have a way to facilitate it. But if you start doing those type of things, you're going to get people mad. You're going to develop a bad culture, and people aren't going to want to cooperate with you. Okay, so you just have to make sure you don't become too much of a zealot.
Yes, exactly.
And I believe that in everything in life. You can be too much of a zealot on the right, too much of a zealot on the left, too much of a zealot religiously, non-religiously, anything. If you go to the extreme, you have to really think about, the point of no return there. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have to kind of look at things like this and go, where I end up in the middle somewhere, especially with people. And the one thing I think I learned at Goodrich, not so much because we had training and everything, through a lot of experience and time as a leader, is understanding how to gauge people and what they would call emotional intelligence, and how are people. And I mean, I have calls with some of my companies that I work on the board for, and I never yell at people, I mean, when I was
young, ever remember you yelling ever.
When I was my first leader in my late 20s, I kind of was a little bit more hard to deal with in that, but I learned over time that that's really not the way to do it, and it makes no sense. And so and the other thing is, where are the people coming from? And if
Yeah.
somebody's really, really upset, and I didn't learn this at Goodrich. I learned it from my wife, actually, and she used to work in retail after she got out of college, and customers screaming at her and, blah, blah, blah. And the one thing she always told me, and I carried it into my work environment, is that you can't control other people's behavior.
Nope, you
You
can't.
can only control
Your own.
how you react to that behavior.
It's true.
And you have to learn how to defuse things. Okay.
Exactly.
Case in point, I don't know if you ever watch these talking heads on the news, whether it be CNN, MSNBC, Fox, man, they're always arguing and they never try to find a compromise, and
Never.
they don't ever try to de-escalate anything.
Yeah.
And and you look at it for 15 minutes and go, well, what did they say? What did they accomplish?
Exactly.
Nothing.
Exactly.
A lot of our politicians are like that too.
A lot of them on both sides of the aisle. They totally are.
Oh, yeah, they are. Most of them are like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of the one thing that I learned if you're going to deal with people.
Yeah.
And you have to be mature enough on how to gauge that. Okay.
Totally. Yeah. And like you were saying, there is a fine line between too much standardization. But it's true with anything, right? Too much 5S, you're going to make people angry because you're trying to make their work area too sterile. Standard work, they're going to start to feel like, oh my gosh, they're watching me. I can't get anything done.
Right.
Too many visual controls. This is an interesting one. So I was talking to one of my clients recently, and they were mentioning that they're overloaded with visuals. So they've got a chart for everything.
Right.
And so I said, have you asked, some of your staff what that looks like to them? No. So they went and did a Gemba walk. They went and asked their employees, what does that look like? All these metrics, they're fabulous, aren't they? And the response shocked them, because the response was, no, I feel like all you care about is the nickel and dime. You don't care about me as an individual. So with everything, like you were saying, the extreme, it's bad. There's gotta be the happy medium, like you were talking about, where it's enough standardization that you're removing the waste and the variation in the process, but it's not so controlling that creativity can't happen. That's one of the things that I appreciate about working in your organization and supply chain. You always allowed us to take some of these concepts that some of our lean zealots would have said, no, this is the only way that it needs to be done, and only this way. You allowed us to kind of play with those things a little bit and say, yeah, that may work for the shop floor, but it doesn't work for supply chain. So we're gonna change the form or the document so that it's more impactful for when we interact with our suppliers. And I appreciated that. So
I can give you an example of something that was too overwhelming. Recently, when was it April or May, I went down to one of our facilities, and I always look at the shop and I look at the driver measure boards and everything. And I just noticed the driver measure boards were just too much junk on them, all these metrics and everything. So I just asked some of the employees, and I got with the shop VP and supervisors, and we go, there's everything on this thing, and the employees all use it. You barely look at it. Okay. So what can we get it down from about 12 different things? We got it down to 3 things. What we got it down to? We got it down to an action item list.
Nice.
And the input output. Okay.
Perfect.
Which is basically, I need to do 5 today, and it's 12 noon, and I've done 3 so far. Okay.
Perfect.
And then the last one is, they dislike the 1-page company announcement, what was going on in the company. And that was up in the upper right-hand corner. Okay. Those are the 3 things we got it down to.
That's awesome.
And that's what they could work with, because the rest of this stuff and all these charts and graphs and everything else. They're just going, huh, what do I do with that?
Why?
You know?
Yeah.
So,
If
and
there's 1,200 pieces of paper on the wall,
right,
anybody going to look at that? It's
right,
wallpaper. Nobody's
right.
going to look at it.
No one's going to look at it. There's one thing when I went to a Chinese company, quite frankly, and we ended up doing business with them, but they did a lot of business with Boeing on the 737, you know, and I think they did some vertical stabilizer aerostructures, and oh man, the driving measure boards were impeccable, but
Wow.
it was wallpaper
Way
though.
too much stuff.
And nobody looked at it. It
No,
was
of
just
course not.
it was supposed to impress me when I walked through it. And so, which is totally what you don't want, because it's
Right.
not there to impress me. How is it a tool that
Yeah.
helps the people that are in the working environment do
Yeah,
their job better?
exactly. How is that helping them think differently about what they're doing?
Right, exactly. So that's
Yeah.
some examples of wallpaper and
Yeah, totally.
getting it down to the vital few. Once again, the vital few.
The vital few. It's so true. Well, and we talked a little bit about, standard work in our personal lives and so forth. But I've mentioned this before in previous episodes of our series on the lean tools, but it seems to me, I don't have any children yet, but it seems to me that kids need boundaries. We constantly hear that kids need boundaries in order to succeed. Is there a difference between boundaries and kind of standardizing their day? Or can they be used interchangeably?
What's some changes? What I would say is, yeah, I do believe kids need boundaries, and I would call them limits more than anything else.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, they welcome that because they haven't matured enough to know all the differences between right and wrong in life yet. And so, some of the boundaries is, well, okay, you've got your 16-year-old daughter, you can't stay out till 1 o'clock in the morning with your friends. Okay.
Yeah.
You can go out there, and who's going to be there, and you maybe can come home 9:30 or 10, but you better answer the phone when I call you or text me where you're at or whatever. So you got to give some limits there. You just can't say, hey, let's go do. But I would say those are boundaries and limits. But I wouldn't say it's
standardized.
Maybe it's a more of a checklist for the parents.
Oh, okay.
Not for the kid itself and trying to be consistent. But listen, that's harder said than done too.
Yeah.
I think dogs need consistency too. Our dog does.
Yeah, I would agree. They struggle when they're not on a schedule.
No,
anything does.
That's right. And when they're not on the schedule, because they need to be fed the same time every day.
Yeah.
They need to go out for a walk the same time every day. Those things are important. And so it's consistent,
Yeah.
So,
it's interesting. I remember Jeff Raley, our good friend Jeff Raley, right?
Right.
I remember him teaching a class on standard work, and he walked in and he was like, I'm really, really sorry, but I am off my game today. And it was like, huh?
Really?
And we were like, why are you off your game? The whole class was like, why are you off your game? And he said, because this morning I did not shave my head.
Right.
And he's like, I did not follow my own standard work. I'm supposed to shave my head and I didn't shave my head. And he's like, and it's thrown me off for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And it made me think about like some of the standards that I have put in place for myself. So every morning I get up, I make the bed, I open the windows, like the blinds.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the first thing I do. I get up, but I open the blinds in the bedroom, and I get up and go make the coffee and those, the typical type of things. And then then I try to relax a little bit, watch the business news in the morning, either CNBC or Fox Business News, just to kind of see what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't like the regular news so much, but I like the business news because I'm interested in what's happening with the stock market and bonds.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of my self-education every day, keeping up with things,
Oh, totally.
Yeah. And
Well, being on a board, you have to know those things.
yeah, so I keep up with those. It's kind of my standard work every day
Yeah.
to keep up with information. And I went to the baseball game the other day, and I went with Steve Carter.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I remember Steve and Ron
Yeah.
and a good friend of mine, Joe Minner. You remember his daughter,
Mhm.
I mean, his daughter-in-law, Holly. Yeah.
Yes.
And I was sitting next to Steve,
Petty.
and he was just asking me some questions because he was going to have a consultation, being a subject matter expert on
Yeah.
something. And he asked me some things, and I kind of couched it along, well, what I had, read or seen on the business channels and some of my experience. He goes, oh, that was really helpful,
Yeah.
And then I asked him some things that I wasn't familiar with. So, if you can't exchange information, and you're just a lump on a,
Yeah.
lump on a couch, which a lot of us turned into being during COVID.
Yeah, during the pandemic. Oh.
I mean, you talk about shaving. I mean, I went 2-3 weeks without shaving sometimes.
Yeah.
And so did a lot of my friends. But
Yeah.
once I start opening up, I said, I just have this little, finally,
Yeah.
and then I've had that for a long, and I start shaving every day, getting haircuts, and otherwise you don't feel right,
Yeah,
So,
exactly. I'm off my game. Like Jeff said, I'm off my game today.
But
It's true.
but that's, that's kind of my view on it. So I always be very cautious about how you apply lean in personal life, unless
Agreed.
unless you got a cabinet or a bicycle to put together.
Yeah, that's a
I mean,
very good point.
Yeah, or get your kitchen organized, and there are some people that there are ways that you can organize your towels, and you roll them up a certain way and everything.
So they fit in the cabinet.
And I will say we had all of our kitchen redone about a year ago, all remodeled and paint, everything. And we took a bunch of stuff out of the cabinets and only put about a third of it back in.
Yeah.
Moved the rest of it out to the garage, but we couldn't have garage sales for a while. So we'll get rid of it that way, because
Yeah.
we don't.
You don't need it anymore.
Don't need it anymore, and less clutter.
Yeah.
But beyond that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like standardizing the way your kids brush their teeth is a bit extreme.
No, I agree.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think us as individuals, we don't realize how much we have standardization in our everyday lives.
Yeah, people will say they don't, but they really do.
Yeah,
And
we really do. And
Right.
those people that say, I don't like standard work or whatnot, I always try to ask them, well, what's your routine? Do you have a routine? And then they understand, oh, yeah, I do have a routine. Oh,
Right.
so you're not trying to control my routine. You're just trying to understand my routine.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. So,
Yeah, it's
So-
it's an interesting one because from my experience as a facilitator, I often see continuous improvement journeys fail when they
Right.
get to the stage of standard work.
well, in fact, I was looking on my phone here,
Yeah.
on, everybody's got a reminder app, right?
Yeah.
So I've got things on my reminder app, and it's all standardized by the week and certain things I got to do. Isn't
Yeah.
that standardization?
Totally.
Well, take out the trash, every Wednesday night, those type of things, and
Yeah.
I get a little beep. I'll go, oh my, it's 5 o'clock. I got to go take out the trash cans.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, isn't that the same thing?
It totally is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people forget that. No, but
Yeah, they do.
reminders are really important.
They
So,
are. They are. And having a routine is really important. And if you had to give a team some advice, they've aced 5S, they understand, at least at a conceptual level, of linkage and flow, and they're starting to do some time observations to develop some standard work. What's some advice you would give to them?
I would make sure that they involve the team
Yeah,
that is going to have their processes standardized. Okay.
totally.
And it's kind of trite, but at the end of the day, you have to get people engaged and you have to get them, involved to have them buy into what you're doing.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would do is, as you're having them involved, and sometimes it's good for them to do some of the observations to watch their coworker, is have them develop with some of your coaching how to come up with doable, achievable countermeasures or actions. Okay.
Yes, totally.
And I would take it slow. Okay. And I do remember one GM at Goodrich, we do a standard work event. They'd have a percent load. And next thing he wanted to reduce the cell by 4 people.
Oh
I
my
said,
gosh.
I'm going, whoa. You haven't finished any of the actions. Oh yeah, this will force it though. I'm going, that's the wrong way to do it. You can't do that. Okay. I'll tell you offline who that was.
Yeah, I'm
But
interested to know.
anyway, you just got to avoid that, and it's get people involved because,
Yeah,
and understanding the human dynamics and mechanics of who you're dealing with. Okay.
totally.
You're dealing with people. Okay.
Yeah,
And don't make it personal.
yeah.
We were always told that attack the process, not the people.
Yeah, totally. It's a real quick way to get resistance if you
Right.
go after the people or utilize the tool to get rid of people.
Right.
That's also a surefire way of getting resistance from it.
Right. So that would be my advice.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
But you've got to have the foundation
Yeah,
of a good culture, I guess, huh? Or one
totally.
okay, not a beat 'em up culture.
Yeah, that's one of the huge blessings that I learned from the Goodrich Corporation.
Yeah.
That was one of the best cultures I've ever come across. And there's a lot of companies that have great cultures that are very, very similar too. So
Yeah.
the way Goodrich did it wasn't perfect, but it was enough to get us to
Right.
behave like adults.
And you have to know the limits of the company you're working with too, because you
Yeah,
may only be able to get to 5S, 6S and linkage and
yeah,
flow in
yeah,
a company, and you can't get to that next level.
yeah.
And it's not
That's
that you're a
true.
failure, it's just that the culture part of getting to that next level
Yeah,
isn't there. And, you advising people occasionally isn't going to change that. It's kind of come from within and as a leadership thing.
totally.
So
Yeah,
that's what I would say is don't beat your head against the brick wall too much, just say,
yeah,
okay, I was able to go this far, you
yeah.
know.
And if you were able to make it through the 5S program, that's a
Mhm.
success. Celebrate
Yeah,
that success.
it
But
really is.
you
It
may
really
be
is.
stuck there for a while. That's true.
I agree. So anyway,
Yeah,
that would be my advice, Michelle.
that's
So
fantastic. Well, this has been so great, Tim. I appreciate it. Is
great.
there
You're
anything
so
that
welcome.
you want to share that that we missed today?
No, I thought it was very good. I like your approach because it was two-way dialogue, and that's another part of a culture thing. You have to have two-way dialogue.
Totally.
And we both were able to engage in a conversation rather than having it one way,
Yeah,
and
agreed.
which is another aspect of a culture thing. So I was
Thank
happy that I
you.
was able to share some of my knowledge, and
Yeah,
I
fantastic.
you always have to pay it forward, and hopefully somebody will enjoy it on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I hope they do because there's a lot of negative content out there these days. And so
Yeah,
we want to
I agree.
change the message a little bit and
I
bring
agree.
some good supportive content. So
Good.
hopefully our listeners out there will enjoy it. And today has been so great. I can't thank you enough.
You're more
Thank
than
you for
welcome.
this. And hopefully you'll come back and talk to us again.
It'd be my pleasure. You have a great day. Okay.
Thanks. You as well. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.